Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nathan Ferry. I'm the Project Management Collective. An absolute pleasure to have you here tonight as we hear from our keynote speaker, Dan Williams AM, and our Women's History Month panel, which I'm very excited about. Before beginning this evening, we wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we've been on today, honorable people, and pay respect to their elders of past, present, and emerging. We wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of the city and region. And I'd also like to acknowledge any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples who are here tonight. We will. Recruiters. So you don't all get away that easy. For those of you who hear the call, as you might know, the Project Management Collective is memberless. We do not have a membership structure. We rely purely on contributions and sponsorships from local businesses in the community. Can I just give a big thank you to Christine, Ida, Vrendula, Forrest, and Ramesh for donating. I don't think I've forgotten anyone, but I have. I'm sorry, but that was the list as of 45 minutes ago. Tonight, I'm very excited to welcome our keynote speaker, who I have a blurb on. So it's a pleasure tonight to welcome David Williams AM. We'll be talking about getting it right from the start, the art of project initiation. David's early background is in project management in the construction industry on large projects such as the Lloyd Gang Power Station in Victoria, the submarine construction facility in South Australia, Bruce Stadium, and New Parliament House in the ACT, Canberra, which is standing right now. He spent 15 years on major capital projects in defence, starting with the Collins-class submarine projects, before working across defence in the management fields of program evaluation, human resources, information, knowledge, quality, risk, and enterprise architecture. He was previously the information architect for the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations, and was the program manager, for implementation of the Work Choices legislation. David introduced a project management office into the Department of Human Services and was the principal specialist intelligence and information systems at the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. He is currently a program assurance specialist at the Australian Electoral Commission. David has a diploma in engineering, master's degree in project management, and a graduate certificate in research methods and design. He is a certified practicing project director, a chartered project professional, and a certified knowledge manager. David also designs and delivers academic courses on project management at the Research School of Management at the Australian National University. David was also the 2019 ACT Australian of the Year Global Hero and is a member of the Order of Australia. Fun fact, David is also a master scuba diving instructor. Now, Paddy, it's just ISIS, and in his gears. And I'm sure David's happy to take that as a question. I need my license back. I'll come back to my car. Without further ado, I welcome David Williams. Right. Did you notice it? I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land which we mean the nominal people, and pay my respects, the Helgas, past, present, and emerging. Okay. So getting it right from the start. So we'll talk a little bit about project initiation, because as project managers, it's something that we don't really get the chance to do. Now, so many times I've been a project manager and you get this lump of steaming project put on your desk and where it's already, business case has already been there, everything's locked down, and would you like to go and manage this? And then you have a look into it and you go, well, this needs an extra 12 months, an extra $10 million if you really want to achieve this. And of course, then an interesting discussion happens. So where possible, I'm trying to use project managers to be more involved in the initiation phase of projects. So we'll talk a little bit about what happens there and maybe how you can get involved in that. So a little bit about life cycle. How should a project be initiated? What could go wrong? How would you know? Which is that's the knowledge aspect of it. Okay, a few case studies, and really happy to have a lot of questions. So the pack here is being provided to everybody, and I'm not going to read from the slides or go into too much detail. So I'm happy to skip through things and really keen to take questions and have a bit of a discussion about aspects of anything I'm covering tonight, because you can always read some of the detail later. Okay. So feel free to ask me questions as we go along. And if you really want to distract me away from project management, which is sometimes hard, we're going to scuba diving or down biking or skiing or skiing or all right. So I'll start off just getting a basic understanding or a collective understanding. And this is a model from Alka and John Smirk from the ANU, who sort of says, and this is a very generic approach to sort of project management phases, where you look at initiation, planning, execution, and then closure. And then in the execution, you get a whole lot of output phases. So, but tonight I want to talk about that area of conceptualizing the business case and developing, project up for when it actually gets accepted and is ready to start in project planning. Right. And that's about this. And the difference is the initiation is this decision to invest in something. So where a client or a sponsor is actually going to put up their money and resources to actually invest in a project. And as project managers, we're very good at doing all that planning, which is get all those things in place, which is about de-risking and preparing an organization to go and commence execution of a project. Right. So to get a bit of a comparison between the two, you can sort of see here at initiation, and the questions are, should we do this? It's at a very, very high level. We're starting to have the inputs of it are things like a problem statement, and problem statement is really important. I'm going to talk to it a little bit further. We develop business cases. We make decisions about is a project feasible? We engage with stakeholders, but quite often the stakeholder we miss out on is the project manager. So this is the person that a sponsor is going to empower to take this massively risky and unique activity and go forward into an organization and make it succeed. All right. And quite often this person is missed out at the initiation phase. And I'm going to put forward a bit of a case about why that's not necessarily a good idea and how you can get involved. All right. So how does initiation go wrong? So that activity of actually starting to put that together, that business case. So the way I see it is quite often there's lack of a clear or coherent problem statement. And that's quite often one of the significant things. What is the burning platform? What is the organization trying to fix? Or where is the opportunity to actually put something in place and lead the market and get a significant return for the organization or build a capability? So that's one of the things. Lack of a realistic objective. Quite often we see that where people have there's a really good idea, but how can they can't really articulate that into what the objective is. So why am I doing this? What does the future look like? And stakeholder engagement, that's quite often where things go wrong, so what we were talking today, where quite often you see business cases being written where someone has squirreled away into an office for 6 months, writes a business case, comes out with a 1,000-page document, goes off to government or goes to executive, and then they this is great, and they sign goal. But if you don't have that consultation, you're missing out on a whole lot of things. Those different perspectives from the stakeholders is so critical to have, because there's no way that you can actually think of everything, think of all those different perspectives about what can go wrong into a project, or what the scope's required, or what's needed. And that stakeholder engagement in a project initiation to build your business case is critical. Insufficient risk assessment, cutting edge technology, or recipes for disaster. Anyone, a couple of people here have worked in defense and know about both those things. Overconfidence, rushing to the market for core comms, focusing on price rather than cost. So that's a really interesting thing. Who's in the private sector here? Okay, so a few people, and I spend a bit of time in the private sector, and where I've actually written proposals for clients. And you'll be in there and you come up with this proposal and you say, well, this is what we think it'll cost. And quite often you get a statement saying, oh, but the customer won't accept that. No, it's got to be less. And you go, well, this is what it's going to cost you. And this is on top of any sort of win or an optimal tenders. When you write a tender, quite often you just say what it's going to cost, what margin do I need, and then what do I need to put on top of that as far as risk when things don't go so well. And that should actually come up with your submission. So it's interesting to have that conversation then that, but that's what the client won't accept that, and we'll need to sharpen pencil, or we'll need to trim back some few things. And you go, yeah, you can do that, but there's a good chance that you'll actually put in a proposal which is over the cost in actually doing that. So I've seen this happen with few IT organisations in government departments over the years. And there was one about 10 years ago where a large American IT company that I won't name because it's people, one person here at least used to work for, decided it desperately needed to get its foot in the door in a government agency. And so it actually went in under cost. And as a result, it got the work. A very accomplished company, very capable, and was successful in the tender. Put in place a highly capable manager to do that. And the instructions for that person was, right, you got this, you have to deliver this service for this large government agency. There isn't much margin in it, and your objective is to make a profit. Okay, so, and of course, then you look at things like if you are running a IT support team for a large organisation, then that creates interesting behaviours where, the service desk is just focused on, how many calls it can actually do in an hour, and not necessarily worrying about solving the call and just writing things off as big squint and not really. And so the quality of the work goes through the floor, and the relationship with the client becomes very core, and it becomes over time unsuccessful. And of course, that organisation never steps foot in that particular agency again. So it can be really difficult. So this tension between, are you actually willing to go in under cost to actually buy market share, and then with the full knowledge that you're going to have to wear that for the length of the contract. That does happen out there. So this difference between cost versus price. Is this resonating with anyone? Yeah. Just a quick question, just back on your inadequate stakeholder engagement point on the slide. I mean, from your experience, do you tend to lean towards the idea of focus group research type, like activities to provide a resource of information from the coalface to a particular project? In other words, are you, as part of your stakeholder, you look at your end user as a critical stakeholder and then do some research to inform, if you like, the project management group in the initial stages to get an understanding of whatever it is that they're going to create is going to deliver at the coalface in 9 months, 12 months, 18 months time. Oh, absolutely. And I don't know why you do any different from that. And then you've got the whole other series of stakeholders. So, you've got your suppliers, partners, the people who are actually going to do the work on the ground, all of those, as well as, your executive. But that, at the end of the day, that getting an idea about those customers is really critical. And focus groups are a good way to do that. However, needs to be done in the context of what I've seen, because in some respects, if a customer is a client, which is someone who receives the service, doesn't necessarily pay for it, they will always want a gold-plated experience, okay, without necessarily paying for it. And the same with a customer who pays for an experience, they will want the best bang for their buck. So you've got to sort of temper what their requirements are with actually what's affordable. But hopefully at that stage, it's actually about developing, what are the various different options or the service levels that could be provided for a customer. And then you can sort of sense, well, what is the price point at which they'd be willing to pay. And these days, in a lot of technical services, that varies. You can get a premium version, or you can pay, for an additional cost for a subscription. And, you got various little subscription as well, which is a really smart way of doing. We don't do that so much in non-technical services, but there's potential scope to maybe do that. But it's always worth having as you said, looking at the different ways you can engage those end customers, because they're the ones who are going to provide the most feedback. And I'll always be a fan of, you doing it for the end user, not doing it for the share price of the company. Yeah. But I guess that's because I probably spent more time in the public sector than in the private sector and that. But I think it does well for the private sector as well. If you focus on what your customer needs are, at the end of the day, they're going to reward you with not at the bottom line.
The only reason I raised that, just in terms of what I'm a part of an Icon water focus group. It's a couple $100 to come along for a couple of hours, and there are 4 sessions. I've been to 2 so far, if a third one for later in April. Point I guess I'm making with renting that too was that here's an organisation developing a plan to develop a second major water treatment plant for Canberra. And so the input, from us as consumers for water here at the RCT it's quite an integral part of their project management scope, in terms of how they're trying to get an understanding of where to put this second water treatment plant. Because it obviously is a large project, it has a lot of flow-on effects in terms of logistics and development structures and where they're going to go piping and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, which is a real challenge for them, because you're dealing with nibbies, not in my backyard. Partner, and then they can actually find out the they have. Yeah, definitely.
I have a questions about how you set the price, right? So if, for example, if the customer had a lot of money, you can throw a lot of money at you and you can produce something that great, right? But then you go and talk to the customer and they tend not to say they won't say that pretty price. They tend to say something probably lower than what they're expecting. So how do you actually get that?
Well, I guess it comes back down to expectations about service levels. So, and that's what I was saying is, if you have various different levels of service and different price points, it gives them the opportunity to shop on that. So that's one way of doing it, but providing those various different levels. But yeah, meeting those expectations is really hard. I'm on a program at the moment where the client, the internal client, the external one, wants a gold-plated solution, absolutely. But we're only got, silver-plated budget. And it's about, managing those expectations, which can be done, but the earlier you can do that and appreciate that that's the position you're in, is actually the better, I think.
I was just gonna check on his thing. So I know I want in the private sector. So we would do like goal bronze, silver option, high, medium, low, and then you tack on, and we'll give you X for free. It might give you a product management plan, or we'll give you executive board briefing for free for X amount of dollars. And then they'll think, oh wow, and just save myself $30,000. Yeah. And then that's how you cover them. And you could do it like a low price at the beginning just to get them on decline. You've done that. And you eat the cost, but then you know that, okay, we're going to find that, well, we have to do pen testing later on after you can everything. So then you give them a whole response that you make that one piece, yeah.
Yeah, do that. No, that's quite a strategic and viable way to do it. But what I'm arguing is that you need to go in with that appreciation upfront, that is going to be your strategy for actually breaking into the market or to actually getting this work or setting a project up for it. So, and a lot of good real marketing people, not salespeople, but marketing people sort of understand this and can be good at writing business cases. But even they are really not always, project management comes into advantage is actually having an understanding about what things cost. Will be able to have the skills to be able to go out and find out what things cost, to be able to engage with people to work out, all right, how long or what is it going to cost, or how long it's going to take to write this particular piece of software or to build this bridge or things like that. And that's why that engagement with the suppliers, all the rest, and your founders is so important. So talking about cost, there's, and we won't get to it tonight, but the end of this slide there is some really interesting process on actually doing costings, doing 3-point analysis costing. So that's a preview on the end of the slide deck there, which is actually taken from work that's done and recently updated, as I saw today, from the Department of Agriculture or Infrastructure on doing cost analysis for projects. So the other thing is quite often MISCO and is insufficient resource or project plan. So things can go quite long in your project initiation. So the consequences are you end up something what is over budget, late, partial, complete, project failure, poor quality, ends up with technical debt for 50% of your IT projects. Why only 50%? It's the other half fair. Exactly right, mate. Oh. Commercial organisation of Bailey, there's a couple of good case studies, Avon and JC Penney. I think I've got going to talk a little bit about that Avon case study tonight. Damage reputation, personal injury or psychological, physical, like robo-debt, Queensland payroll. Anyone involved that saw Queensland payroll?
No.
It's on the news.
Yeah,
I've been a smaller newspaper.
yeah, it was about 10 years ago now, was the Queensland Ombudsman said that was the absolutely worst project that they'd ever seen, and definitely the worst done by a state government in Australia. I was even worse than my key.
So like similar with New South Wales or Victorian Trenton government. Yeah. Some of the projects are pretty, wasn't it?
And then you can have impact on sovereign security or capability, like with the National Health Scheme in the UK, which I think until recently was the most expensive program failure. And that was a really interesting one. If we get time, I'll talk about that. It was a project I got offered to go on, and I actually declined to go to the UK for 4 years to work on that program. Ended up going for 14 years, cost £24 billion, and was cancelled.
Yeah.
So that was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And Seasprite, which was Seasprite is an interesting case study where in some ways it was successful and in some ways it wasn't. It just depends who you were as far as an interpretation of that. But it did mean that defence didn't have that that capability for some time or that. But interesting concept.
I just have a curiosity, just a comment. I mean, you've been involved in public sector project manager for a while, right?
Yeah.
I had a partner at one stage who was involved in some projects in the public sector, and they didn't fail, that they went way beyond their, blew out the budget the whole bit. But has your experience been that there's been quite a higher level of project failure within Rio gets?
Look, the ones that do fail, actually, there's, because they're public, they get made public. You don't hear as so much of the private sector failures unless they really become public. Like, there's a couple of, like the JCPenney and the Avon one where it became pretty public. No, overall, government in Australia, the federal government and most of the states don't do a bad job on projects. It just depends on some of these other factors that can occur with it when they get really, really big and complicated and ambitious. So if becomes an imperative to do something, as I say, where there's overconfidence and a drive to do something without a proper analysis and some thinking about, is this something that is feasible and viable to actually do, then they can go a bit better. So you see a few, but I'd say that like the incidence is probably
About the same. I think public sector complete one project, they might not deliver one project. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Yeah, that's what they do is because they are so limited by the budget. Well, they reduce the scope for every financial year, and that's what they do. Like I've delivered few projects, and the scope is reduced, and now we're delivering this by June, and then we move it to next year, and then it's delivered by June. So they do deliver it. I would say the success rate within public sector is way more than private. Within private, there is 17% transformation that actually do not deliver changes as they were intended to. So they still deliver it, but we're not getting the same return of investment as the government or public sector does.
Yeah, and then it's how you measure it. So many projects in a public sector are not necessarily financial and have qualitative outcomes and benefits. So it's easier they can look like they've succeeded. But many projects in the private sector are done for the return on investment or increase in market share or renewal, something like that. So a lot easier to indicate that whether or not they succeeded or fail.
My only comment, I don't know, to raise my hand about was I had the pleasure of working on generic visa portal, GVN, which was supposed to be an amalgamation of all the visa portals at the time. I think one point of it in the media is John Howard Spalding, because he put a significant amount of money in it. I'd just say one thing from like decade of experience in the ABS is that a lot of projects that I worked on actually fell forward. So a lot of the work that the project actually does ends up getting salvaged and used somewhere else, whether it be another iteration of the project or they take the user design elements and they put it somewhere else. That's something I've seen in some cases. The public service has done well, where the private sector, I've actually seen this right whole thing off and start all over again. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, would agree on that. And I think the DTA now has digital transformation agency in the federal government. I think has a good approach where it's trying to focus government agencies in limiting the value of bid projects to no more than $50 million. Because if historically it's been where they go over that, the instance of failure has increased and the consequences of that failure have been quite significant as well. Now we can look at Gully ERP, Westwind. Some of the replacement of the solutions down in Tuggeranong, which they salvage to a certain degree. To a certain degree.
Reluctantly and kind.
Well,
I'm old model so far, so
Yeah, I mean, they still had to leave a whole back end in, but, they've got SAP running.
the sticky tape is what.
Yeah, yeah. So they've been able to sell it. So, but yeah, once you start to go over that cost, the complexity and the risk just goes through the roof. So I think that move towards trying to make government projects, more modular is good. The only thing is, like, if you do part of a project, really to uplift the capability, you actually need a larger investment, but you're not going to get that until you've done the first one successful. And there's money available in the budget, which there won't be for next year. And, you're successful in competing against others. So it really is a real deal situation with that.
I have a question for you, David, and this is more the human side of it. The project initiation, right? And I see a lot of project managers who say yes to that. Yes, we can deliver it within the budget. When we can actually see that it's not going to be delivered within budget. So do you think there is a bit of like that human factor comes in when we are committing to it because we have to, right?
Yeah, there's a couple of things there. There's an organisational thing where you're told you have to commit to it. There's also the other aspect, well, if I don't commit to it and say yes, then I'll have to find another job somewhere.
Yeah.
And then there's the aspect that I think project managers tend to be inherently, I think to be a good project manager, you have to be confident, almost to the point of being maybe a little bit overconfident. And you'll have a go at things. And I think that tends to be the case sometimes, that you'll think, oh yeah, I can find $10 million somewhere in there down the track, and it'll happen, or I'll just put the change for that step out of it.
Yeah, no, if you don't have a choice. I don't know how you made that as a choice.
I think the only thing about that is, in Canberra in particular, is your reputation is everything. So if you say you could do something you can't, then you've got no chance of being able to get. So I have no craft saying to executives, no chance. Not a hope. That's what it. Yeah, they lose it, they swallow their tongue, and they'll say, what do you need? And I'll say, I need 12 months, $10, give me some more people, you deliver it. But I will never say I've been doing something if I can't. And if that means you've got Java, hit-home job. So I'm not going to remote education. I haven't said that yet. So I'm not going to.
And that's actually interesting, like you mentioned that. And I think that comes from your experience.
Yeah. Is that right?
Our red hair and brown hair are saying that we have experience.
Yeah, exactly.
That we can actually stand up and say, well, sorry, you can't deliver this, and I need to the primary role. But some of the young project managers, because they have so much responsibility on them and they're not that experienced, they want to get that experience, they may be under pressure to say yes. And that's how it does want triple to
coach. Yeah, one of the say to our juniors, right, how do we support them in the toughest? So to be able to say to this is the network you've got. If these people come to you and say, I'm going to deliver this, and they know they got the car, they can come to people like us and say, what do I say? How do I do it? We just all understand it. And that's one of our discussion tonight, how to challenge this kind of stuff. No, you don't have to pay it. Anyways, I'll let you continue.
So I think that's really good. And I've got a slide at the end, which I might turn to very quickly because we're running close to time. I think a little bit more. It's okay. I'll get to that. Where I sort of said, as a young project manager, here's some of the questions you should be asking when this project's dropped on your desk. And I think I know if it's like, or it's just, you can sometimes smell things and you go, this is not going to work. And I think I might take that project over there. Thank you very much for your offer. But as you say, developing that skill is really, really hard. And and I think the suggestion that, if you've got a good mentor or you've got other people you can talk to, and, industry groups like this are really, really useful for things like that, because it's not something you can learn from doing a Prince 2 course or even, our courses are new and rest. It's something you learn, on the job.
And AI is not going to tell you.
No.
AI will not tell you that then.
No. Yeah. So this was this, and I'll do this and I'll just switch you go. This is this Avon Godel service model as a case study where they went out to do an ERP for the whole of Avon, didn't know Avon coin or the rest around the world. And they decided to, I think this one where they just did it in Canada. And they put a off-the-shelf system in, but the way they tailored it was such that it had incredible usability problems, was unfriendly and significant business design, and the sales reps just walked away from it, went and worked for somebody else. And they couldn't keep the poor or no change management for the solution, didn't pilot it. They actually had to walk away from it, cost them between $100 and $125 million. And for a company like Avon, even though it's a big company, that took from backwards about 10 years to be able to resolve, just because they didn't do their homework up front and properly plan this particular program and get everything right for it before it went forward. So, interesting project.
Can I ask you on your piece, what do you think is the key for success, and especially from a project initiation and then the others of project?
Oh, for an ERP?
Yeah.
Right here, what? Good thing. I think understanding that every ERP is different. That to me is the first thing. I got involved in the one we put into defense back in 2002. Yeah. What's it called? It was, I forget, they put people's socket as their payroll system. And they thought it was going to be straight off the shelf system. Yeah. And they would just be able to put it in. And I guess the Queensland government one was a classic business case recently, where they made a whole lot of assumptions going forward that it was just going to be a simple rollout. And it's never been the case for any ERP system I've seen. It's that you've got to really look closely at what your users required, and particularly you're doing things like personas, doing things like use cases and user stories to be actually define how a solution is going to be used at the end of the day. And doing that up front starts to give you an idea about how big and ponderous this particular solution could be. And then that starts to give you an idea about all the things you actually need to do, apart from just dropping something off the disk onto the server and firing up and push them. So that's my thoughts. Anyone else?
I just want to add on to that, and having delivered few ERPs, it is so important because the ERP, you cannot deliver all the benefits of ERP as soon as the project is live. Like it takes really like of a small ERP to mature a couple of years within the team. And that's how you get the real benefit of that ERP. So you can get some straight away, and that's where the change management then comes in with that optimization and maturing of that process.
Yeah. Moving an organization and all its people and its customers from one ERP solution to the next is a massive job.
100%.
Yeah, that really is. And the closest ones was Queensland. I got involved in the Queensland government one afterwards, in when they actually went and did it a second time. But the first one, they quit a large, well-known solution in. And what happened is they just did not do their homework, and they put it in Department of Health in Queensland. They didn't realise how many different types of people were employees there were. And they dropped it in, they fired it up, and they tried to retrofit it. They just had so many errors and so many problems, and so many instances where they either didn't pay people, they overpaid them and then demanded money back and they worked it out, or underpaid them, or didn't even pay them at all. And these are people who are like cleaners and orderlies working in hospitals and they're going without pay for 4 weeks. No, it's incredible that they can actually treat people that badly. No. And it got to the point where they had to employ nearly 1,000 people to actually do manual payrolls for about 18 months to actually get it sorted out. And then they went and ran that ERP system again. This time they actually did it in quite a small part of Queensland government. They did it in emergency services, and that's where I got involved in it. And they bedded it in, they got it working. So it was actually more like a pilot, and then they progressively rolled it out into the other state government departments, and that was a lot more successful.
If I may add, I've actually sold ERP solutions as an IT salesperson before. And one of the most important things is a lot of companies sometimes don't even know why they need an ERP. Again, let's not even look at anything else. Why do I need an ERP? Who is going to use it? Right? How much do I really need to spend now before I add on 5 years, 10 years down the road? And a lot of the times, end user and the one who's selling the ERP are not speaking to each other properly.
Yeah.
Right? So when you're not talking to each other, you don't even know what is the value that you're going to get from an ERP. And then you're putting the headache on the IT team, the employees to actually use them. And when they don't get what they have paid for, this is where we get this kind of problems happening.
Yeah. And then everyone gets upset. The management are frustrated because they don't know how to fix it, except throw more money at it. Your project team is hamstrung, and your vendor is going, well, no. In some cases, we told you this would happen. You've got to do this properly, and you're trying to rush it. Just make June 30 deadline. Go live on July 1.
Yeah.
It's fair life.
Yeah. And that comes from you're not looking at the long-term strategy. If you're not foreseeing those problems and not understanding that, half the guns are saying ERP being operated because they are out of support. That's the worst reason to upgrade any ERP anyway. So you're not looking at the long-term strategy, why we need it. So it's such an important point that you raise. Yeah.
Anyway, I will cut this short because I'm really keen to hear and be involved in the panel. So you've all got access to this. So I'm going to just float through this a little bit quicker. And which is looking about, these are some indicators where an initiation is vital. And one of the things is, if you're an organisation has a rigorous portfolio management, you've got a much better chance because there are structures in place to make sure it's the cream that gets to the top, not necessarily it's a squeaky wheel. And that's what happens. Work in one very large government department where, each one of the very senior executives expected that next year it'll be my turn for my favourite project was going to get out, irrespective if it was, the right one to do. A bit about project proposals in there, about actually what you've got to do as far as driving a case for change. What is the burning platform? Why are you actually doing this? And is it because it's out of service? Is that a valid, case for change? Structure on a case there. How to write a good problem statement. We see that done quite badly all the time. There's something I could see ones there. And I've got a case study in the slide deck about B Sky B, which is quite interesting. And their problem statement is terrible because their objective was, we want to have the best CRM in the world. Okay. And my always question is, how will you know and why? Anyway, that's what stuff. What makes a good project statement? How to do a good project objective? Which might be for B Sky B might be something like this. Enterprise-wide CRM enables our staff to deliver a level of customer service that delights customers and increases our market share. Measurable, achievable. Bit about project outcomes, how to do project outputs, case study on BSB, which is terrible. It's budgeted for $50 million, cost $265, and I think they put it in the bin, and then they sued EES for $200 million a year. Just, there's something that should be official. some of the failures of that. A bit about business cases in here and how to do business cases, what the structure looks like. So it's pretty straightforward. Bit on financial or commercial and cost benefit analysis, which is how to determine what a good business case looks like. And some of the stuff our New South Wales government, terrible on that. They do a good job. And they also do a good job on benefits as well, New South Wales State Governor. The things are initial project management planning. And there's a few slides here on costing, actually how to do costing. It's a little bit technical, but if you're interested in doing some things like estimates on how to determine, what is the sorts of variation or uncertainty in a project costing, or how to determine the amount of contingency that you want. There's a few good slides in here to look at that. Range-based costing, which I'm a big fan of, which is where you do things like best case, most likely, worst case, and then you can do some spreadsheet magic and come up with a variance, variables, and contingency. So if you want a 50% chance, if you are putting your price range of 50%, which is your most likely, you still need $2.3 million of contingency for a $12 million project. So some really good, supportable, in these particular models, way of actually justifying the contingency that you're asking for, not just adding on 20%. Yeah. And comes up with some graphs. So this is the slide I wanted to get to. So when you get a project come on your desk, I'm sort of saying, I always ask, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And what does success look like? And they're generally the first two questions I ask. And then normally you don't get to be others. But what are the outcomes that must be achieved for this project to be considered successful? And by whom? So who's actually determining success? Because you could do it on cost, the budget, on schedule and meet the scope, but it might sit on the shelf. So it's from a project management perspective, that's a successful project, but not to the client and maybe not to the investor. Okay. But you could do a project. Classic was what the sort of classic is the Sydney Opera House. 19 times over budget, 4.5 times over schedule, provided a return on its investment in 4.5 years, and is the iconic building across the world. But project, but from everyone else's perspective, major success. What assumptions are being made? What are your constraints? What contingencies available? What are the risks? And what resources do you have to actually run the project? So I think if you ask those 8 questions, it really gives you a good idea, a bit of confidence about, is the project actually not only feasible, but actually viable to actually run with? And is this something that you actually want to put your hand up and spend the next 2, 3, 4 years of your life actually committed to? Because, a lot of these things you lie awake at night about stuff, and you want to do it because something that you're passionate about and you believe in, and you know that can succeed. All right, I will leave you with that slide. And if there's any last questions.
Mentioned at the start that if there was a project manager at the start of the project, would they then they got to have the buy-in as well. Then a lot of these problems would never come to because they'd had someone planning, organising, looking down 30,000 feet, saying it's all the way along from the initial sort of light bulb moment of someone going, oh, I think we need this thing. And then PM comes in and goes, okay, what problem are you trying to solve? So if that scenario lines up, would all these problems still be there, or some of them, if they really know, love and respect their PM and want to give them that responsibility, would you see this happening? Or
it depends. Where I've seen project managers involved earlier, I usually bring that skill set, that organisational and analytical skill set to the table, where they'll they'll cost something, they'll work out what the cost, they'll schedule it adequately, they'll determine what the risks are. So there's all those fundamental things that a project manager brings to the table, which then can be, hopefully, will inform the business case and the project initiation. Something that I just always say.
Definitely. I don't have preference. I won't see the company. The something that I've seen is quite often when something goes from opportunity or a bid and then it transition of the work is won, where the capture manager or the person managing the bid was from sales or another area. Quite often it's, I promise you the world, I'm only going to capture very big ballpark risks. I'm going to make a lot of assumptions, but not document that. Like a lot of cascading issues. And then what often happens is they go, I'm off to my next bid. Then they head it to the PM. PM comes in and goes, okay, I have no risks identified. Client's been promised the world. There's assumptions that were made amongst the client that now I have to go and find, right? Whereas if the capture manager who was working on the bid to begin with was actually a project under who then to go to the work post-win, they're very successful. And the difference is literally, you don't think red, amber, green, going from everything's green during opportunity, project occurs amber, red within the first 6 months, and then they spend like 18 months recovering, versus with PM involved, most of the time I've seen they might go amber for a bit to reset some expectations, but they generally then go back to green within the first 6 months. So it's, yeah.
And the other thing I forgot on here, which you just remind me of, because you're shaking me again, is there a plan for this to be put into service? So how are we going to do our change management?
Yeah.
Yeah. And quite often it's not. It's just drop the thing off the end, or as we used to say in the fence, throw the dead cat over the fence, walk away, mission accomplished.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people would know in public it's called acceptance into service. That's what's very, very important. And he needs to prepare people from way before then the go might put that acceptance into service. Because there could be capability problem as well. That the new solutions that need to make sure people are actually ready and trying it alive.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you very much. Oh, you're gone.
Okay, so I've been on the customer side most of my experience. And when here we're trying to do a project and there's a bid, we do the whole 3 proposals and all that, and then we look at costs and the comparisons and all that. And it's very hard to justify the more expensive bid for various reasons. And I completely agree that I think some vendors try to reduce their costs to get the foot in the door. But having said that, I feel working through, so you do the project, the first project, and then there's enhancements, and then there's all this and all that you had on. Have you seen a vendor that actually has said, oh, in the overall delivery, I feel I should not have taken this? Because as a customer, I feel at the end of the day, you've actually, both sides have sort of ended up on like a level playing field kind of thing. Would you?
Oh, I've seen vendors like, what I mentioned before with a large government agency, which bought market share and was unsuccessful. And that was, I think there's still scars from some people in that agency from when that happened. So it does, and it's, let's worry about the organisation, but the impact that it actually has on those people, on the suppliers, is quite significant. I mean, and really isn't good. So it does happen, but being a smart buyer as far as the criteria that you use to assess a bid is really important. And instead of looking at price, I always say look at cost. So what's it actually going to cost you to put that capability in place? And only component of that is the price that the vendor is providing you, because there's all those other things that make up. Okay. Thank you so much for your engagement.
Thank you so much, everyone. And welcome back. Hope you all had an excellent break and were able to grab a refreshment. Look, it's my pleasure, after hearing from David just a bit earlier, to welcome our panelists tonight, and I will go through welcome them now. Before I do, just a final call out for our QR code, which is just here on the screen. If you haven't had an opportunity, please scan the code, If you see questions that resonate with you, please give them a like. You don't have to sign in. You don't have to register. No credit card detail to them, but Humanitics, go for it. And yeah, if you don't see a question that's been placed on there, please go and add it in. Okay. Without further ado, I welcome our fellows. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Trish Gorman. Trish is the theme technology and delivery leader with more than 25 years experience delivering large-scale digital and organizational transformation across Canberra, across government and financial services. Currently based in Canberra, Trish has led complex technology programs spanning from cloud migration, enterprise platforms, data capability, and operational transformation. Her superpower is translating strategy into delivery, bringing together technology, governance, and multidisciplinary teams to deliver outcomes in highly regulated environments. Trish has worked across major Commonwealth agencies and financial services organizations, leading large teams and complex programs with strong program governance, stakeholder engagement, disciplined delivery, accurate to success. Trish is also a company director of Murray Irrigation Limited, Australia's largest private irrigation company, and co-founder of the Female Leader, a platform focused on supporting and amplifying women in leadership. Welcome, Trish. Thank you. And Pradesh is here. Pradesh is a strategic change practitioner with over a decade of experience helping organizations lead complex change across retail, telecommunications, cyber, mining, and government sectors. With a background in technology, she works closely with leaders to translate strategy into meaningful, lasting change. Pradesh brings a people-centered, practical approach to transformation, supporting organizations to navigate uncertainty, build capability, and achieve outcomes that endure. Welcome to New. Ranesha to Thief, representing the vile voice of unknowing professionals. Ramesha recently graduated with a Master of Business Informatics. Did I get that right? Perfect. In project management at the University of Canberra. Ramesha is particularly passionate about the intersection of emerging technologies like AI and traditional project management practices. Welcome, Ramesha. Last but certainly not least, Bino Garthagaro. Gunasekar. Welcome. Bino is a program and project management professional with experience delivering initiatives across telecommunications, fintech, digital platforms, sustainability programs, and cross-sector partnerships. Her work focuses on translating complex ideas into structured programs that create measurable impact for organizations and communities. She has contributed to multi-stakeholder initiatives including academia, industry, financial institutions, particularly in areas related to sustainable development and inclusive economic growth. Through these collaborations, she has helped coordinate projects that bring together diverse expertise to address real-world challenges. Passionate about effective governance and delivery, Vino is interested in how project management practices can support mission-driven work and long-term societal outcomes. She brings a collaborative leadership style and a strong focus on aligning people, strategy, and execution. Vito is particularly committed in advancing the role of women in project leadership and believes diverse perspectives strengthen audit outcomes and organizational governance. She enjoys sharing insights from her experience navigating complex programs and building partnerships that drive meaningful change. Welcome, Vino. Thank you. And of course, a big welcome once again to David, who's joining us from the earlier keynote presentation. One of the view, so hopefully I bought you all a little bit of time that I press Alt-Tab on my computer and live, terrifying we're using live, we should see a whole heap of question come up on this screen in a font that I do not like. Time out. That's fine. Perfect. So we have some questions here. I will read them out because I do not want our panelists to end up with very, very cranked necks. But I will also zoom in slightly because I need to go to spectators. Bye. I can't leave. Oh, terrible. Okay, there we go. There we go. Look, the whole idea behind this as well is that by asking you, the audience, to take the opportunity to look at the questions, to vote on them, it should reduce the requirement for me to take questions from the audience. I'll still, as we go along, we'll probably have maybe 2 or 3 questions offered to the audience at the end. And my expectations are that those will flow from some of the things that hear from the earlier questions. So we have 3 equals 7 votes. 7 votes. And I'll just go through them in order. And again, no particular preference on who goes first. If someone's more passionate, just go for it. And sometimes I might steer the conversation. And, if we haven't heard from certain people, I might volunteer you. No. So the first one is, have you experienced moments in project environments where your voice or leadership style was overlooked or underestimated? How did you navigate that? And what needs to change for future women in project roles? I want to take that one first.
I hope that's Barry. I just recently did a MAVES transformation for ComSuper. We basically regutted all of the switch and the network infrastructure in the organisation. When I was first engaged with that piece of work, because women don't predominantly do networking and switches, the firewalls, they didn't think that I could do it. And after I basically got some briefings from my architects and my chief engineers, we basically stood it successfully. The project had been going for about 2.5 years. We were able to solidify the outcomes, the delivered timeframes, and the resources, to your point. So they basically doing the stock take, and we delivered within 9 months. So unfortunately, sometimes there are streams in project management delivery that people think that women are quite aligned to, and they make those assumptions correctly.
And that sort of requires a more nuanced approach to people and set of skills in terms of how you handle objections. Yeah.
Anyone else from the panel want to comment on this one? The word welcome to the panel. Spearing. Robbie?
So I think as a young project professional, I think for me is seeing women in the industry and seeing them as a role model. I think we all have seen, or maybe we know about that experiment where the young kids were told to draw an astronaut or a doctor or a technician. They drew a male figure. And when they were told to draw something, where do you find your mother? And they would draw a kitchen or, something that we just normally expect. And when I was at uni and I was telling people that I'm doing my specialization in project management, they would tell me that, oh yeah, because your role, that's why you're doing that. And not because that I was very passionate about project management. I was telling Trish that I was 19 years old when I started as an intern in project management field, and I was absolutely in love with that profession, and that's why I pursued it. So I think seeing women as our role model, and I always see that if when you talk about navigating something, there should be a recognition of a problem, and only then we can navigate that. Only from my perspective. So I always see that when you talk about change, we need to see that. We need to see that happening a lot and again, and seeing women or talks like that where young people can feel that yes, we do belong to those places, and we can bring more women like that. We do belong to those places, rather than people telling us that we don't because we are. So yeah, that's.
And you see a lot more requirements then on industry to provide more structure That's the one I'm thinking of. I'm talking about going back to overturning these ingrained, misogynistic hats or whatever, or cultural, whatever you want to call it, views. I'm wondering whether we should see a more stronger push by industry to move professionals back into the education system for these newest, sessions with young students, boys and girls, but highlighting some of these gender bias types approaches and so on. Maybe that's something we should really resonate, encourage with the organisation, Ken. Okay.
Sorry, I had to take a photo, so I'm going to read and answer you very specifically. I want to talk about the underestimation of my voice and my leadership style. So we are not, like, nobody, people associate leadership with a title. And as a young project manager or a change manager that I am, you walk into a room and they say, oh, they're like, what, 25-year-old, what do they know about leadership? But you are given that responsibility of delivering something and you have to deliver that, right? Underestimation of my voice, having grown up in India, where traditionally women's voice is suppressed, we grew up with the notion that we are supposed to be soft-spoken. We are not supposed to be loud. We are not supposed to stand out in a room. We are supposed to listen to men first and not speak at all, or maybe speak last. Having been brought up with those cultural nuances, which I call walking into a room where I have to deliver a strategy presentation and being asked, are you going to deliver this? And that's when, as a woman, you need to think, yes, I am. And you need to answer that confidently. And that's where I tell all young girls that I talk to, that when you walk into a room and you think someone is questioning you, you need to be actually overconfident. That's very meager or confident that I belong here. That's why I'm walking in here. I was given a job. I was given an opportunity. I've gone through all that, that interview process, which I don't believe is fair to anyone anyways, because it's again subjective to whoever is interviewing you and cannot judge you on the basis of 30 minutes, them asking the questions. Then you belong there, right? And then the next one is what needs to change for future women in project roles. It's not something that can be done in a day or in a month or in like a year. It is, we need to do what we call in IT, the root cause analysis. And the root cause analysis is that if we talk about Australia, let's talk about some statistics. So when we step into a project world, there is almost a very equivalent of men and women into project world. It's 50%, right? 49% women and 51% men as study the project coordination and project management role. When we get on to those transformation roles, head of transformation and head of PMOs, that drops to 29% from women. So it's not the entry level. So yes, Kamisha, to your point, it's absolutely fantastic. That's fine if it's being considered as a fluff role and women and girls are scouting into that. That's absolutely fine. The problem is that understanding or that assumption of being carried into those leadership positions, and that's where the dropouts happen, the 29%. So when it comes down to offering that role to a woman to continue on their journey is when it's not offered to them. So the change is not just about us talking about it and saying, oh, yes, that's what we need to do. We cannot change it. Let's be honest. We cannot change it. It needs to come from people who are sitting on those board roles. It's coming from the people who are sitting on those leadership positions and giving women their opportunities. Their mentality needs to change. They need to understand that today, we're not going to accept it, that you're not going to offer me a role. And we need to stand up and say, I'm going to walk away from this toxic culture. And I need to walk into the culture where I can actually speak up and have my voice heard. So even if you have to sacrifice that job at Sunset, which I have done many times, and that's a different story that I can share at some other time, where I walked away from toxic culture where women are not respected in their role. And yes, I took a hit. Yes, I do not own a multi-million-dollar house because I walked away and I did take a hit on my career. But my self-respect, and for women, upcoming women leaders, it was very important for it to start somewhere. And that's what I teach my daughter and every girl that I speak with. If you have to walk away, walk away. That's not resilience. That is not living, surviving in a toxic culture is not equal to resilience.
Good point, Nick. So thank you so much for that. And something I failed to mention, because we do have a whole heap of questions that I do set about a 7-minute time range one, and I will blindfold people.
Well, I need 17 minutes on every year. 7 is not anything as well. Bring a bottom of the line, right? Very come on, this film is very serious topic.
Well, we'll move on to the next question if that's okay. And I'll actually ask Vino, and I'll speak a little bit slower to give Vino some time, Holding, to lead the discussion on this one for the panel. So for those who are using challenge, such as myself and these going spectators, have a leave that it says, for new graduates, what opportunities do you feel you have today that previous generations fought for, and where do you still feel held back? Or Taryn?
Okay, so I'm not that new of it. Oh, yeah, you know. But if I look back, right, I started my career as a project engineer. It was a TV company back in Malaysia. And so it was a technology division, so engineering, project engineering type stuff. And the team was maybe 30 people. There was 6 managers, all male. There were 3 females in the whole department. But I have to say, I have been lucky and blessed to, I didn't face any, I guess, my voice was still heard, right? It was, if somebody didn't listen to a voice, it wasn't just me. They wouldn't listen to somebody else like it. So it wasn't there was no disadvantage as a woman, I think. But now, fast forward 20 years, I'm so happy to see, right? Like wherever I've gone and the career that I've progressed with, technically as well, there's so many more women, right? And that's so nice to see, because at the end of the day, I think it's really the diversity that you bring to the table, male, female, everything, right? You bring a different view, you bring a different point. I think that's where there's value. Yeah, so in terms of opportunities or younger generation, I feel these days is a lot better. Maybe don't share with a better position to answer. But, like also they said, if you like it, go for it, right? Don't let anything stop you, right? There's nothing really. If you really want to do it, just put your sing yesterday. It wasn't easy, but hey, I've met some great people and I'm thankful to hear.
Pravesha, it sounds like
Yeah,
always been
absolutely. Absolutely. I think we have so many resources these days, and I wouldn't begin with that. But I'm a UC graduate, so if you are enrolled in a 4-year degree program or 2 years of a program, you actually get a pre-access to LinkedIn Learning, which is beautiful. And I also get to do a lot of certifications through that platform. We have Udemy, and along with our course, we get to do a certification of Pega as well. So I'm really passionate about learning, new things and all. And I get a certification through that degree. So I believe, yes, we have a lot of things online these days. Yeah, resources online. And then I believe that before, women didn't have, organizations that were backed by government. We have so many organizations these days. We have WIC. I mean, one of the very famous. We have Limit in IT. And both of them, like online courses that are, I know a few of them, they were actually created by women, which actually made me feel so good that, okay, one of me, have actually done that. So yeah, and I think you all can relate to that maybe you have not a maybe, but you might have experienced discrimination entering into a room where you wouldn't see a woman and or a decision maker like us. So now I think things have changed a lot, and wherever I'm working, those programs are, they are led, national programs, they are led by women, and I feel absolutely great, and I see that there's a lot of like great future for young people like me.
I've covered in the controversial method. I think there's still a lot of work to do, especially around women that are my age, that we're at the end of the road, we're kind of trajectorying out. And I still think sometimes we're a bit stingy with our time giving it over to people like yourself. And I think there's still a little bit of kind of keeping the keys to the castle, quite close as opposed to kind of sharing that. And for me personally, that's not what I'm about. So hence why I'm here tonight. I've mentored a lot of young women over the years about project management, leadership, communications, whatever that looks like. And I still think there's a bit to go to kind of uplift, our future generations that are emerging leaders, because, it's when you're living in Canberra in particular, it's a hard city to crack open. It's a hard city to get that network across and to understand who to speak to. And, we've had a conversation today. We're going to connect. I'm going to help you, right? And that's what I do. And I think we need to become more generous as senior leaders to be able to give you some of our lessons learned, some of our scars, and say, hey, we've done this, but there you go, and give you that back. And I think that's something that I would like to see more of us doing, this to kind of to bring up and to uplift our emerging leaders in this space.
And I can probably contribute to that in a sense. So I've been in the finance industry for 29 years. And in that space, go back to 2000, to see a woman in an industry seminar, you might find one, only two, and that's it. Today, very different picture. And more importantly, it's the industry associations that are driving the development and formulation of core mentoring groups within this industry. And so in fact, we're starting to see now a wave of innovation in terms of how women can form collectives, like industry specific, commercial finance, consumer finance, residential, leasing, whatever, and we're starting to see women move more into those sectors. So when I come to a bi-monthly industry networking event, there'd be wouldn't be 50-50, or I'd say it's getting close to 70-30, 60-40. Nah, 70-30, which is still a great milestone today relative to 20 years ago.
I would go,
Industry is important.
I think it was the Agile Process Managers Lactation in Sydney, and I think I was one of two. And it was like, 100 dudes there.
Yeah, it's so good for the dude. Yeah, I could do it. I'll go to the industry then. I'll do more valuable than they. I'll do a business.
Vita, it's funny you say that, because I've had the scan of the room as we were talking, and men here are actually outnumbered. You explain what scan.
I aim for it. I paid every woman here.
It's good. I just wanted to, because Damon's not going to get away from being the few questions on the panel. Dave, your background, with the research management, the research called management, ANU, obviously you would have some experience, exposure of working with, students and graduates. What's your thoughts about this? Oh, Eston, I was thinking that one of the things I think that has made a difference in the near recently has been higher education, that it's opened up opportunities for women to gain a master's or a degree or a master's or and entry in through that higher education has really enabled them, I think, to grow that whole project management as a discipline and as a future area of employment, and I think that that's given them the confidence to then go forward. I mean, I would say, and Foxy might have a comment as well, as I would say probably out of over the last 10 years, the 10 best project managers I've seen that come out of my classes, I would say 8 or 9 of them have been women and have been really, and have gone to do, really good work. And I think that
encouraging women into education through higher education has enabled them to gain confidence and then work. So I think that's been something that's been of advantage, as well as the things you've been talking about, particularly mentoring and the industry opportunities as well.
Maybe even secondary education, like teaching young kids, 13 years to 17.
Well, the first program,
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like
You just told my line. I didn't know, but I might think, yeah. But that's an excellent point. And I was mentioning the root cause analysis, right? As women and as parents, I shouldn't say as women, as parents, as mothers, fathers, in any capacity that you're raising kids, and specifically if you're raising girls, that we need to ingrain in their brain, wherever they're going, they belong there. The first thing that we hold back ourselves in, oh, I've had a 2-year career break, or I've done this, but that man is more capable. Doesn't matter. As David said, organizations are working hard toward opening those doors for women. There's pathways, but the problem is 80% of women are not walking that pathway. We need to start walking that path. We need to burst through that door. Nobody's going to push us through the door. You can say you can take the horse to the pond. You can't force the horse to drink the water. So we need to walk through that door. At the moment, if you look at the board roles, if you look at the senior exec positions, the leadership positions, 8 out of 10 resumes belong to men. There's nothing wrong against men for that, but they're applying for those. As women, we are holding ourselves back because we are so harsh on ourselves. Empathy and sympathy belongs in the leadership room. They belong in the boardroom. Every person is different. So we need to take that with us. And that's my message. That's what is holding us back. Even now, Ramesh's points, yes, they're coming up with so many resources, but that upbringing of girls, how they're being brought up, is still holding them back from going forward and applying for those positions. I do that sometimes, but then I sleep or it's like, I'm so gonna bloody do it. The worst answer is no, and that is it.
Thanks, Dash. And look, I'm getting a little bit rhythm now from Hells. It's handy. And I reserve the right to not do a question, and I'm going to tick the third one because it actually kind of builds on the second line. And actually, every panelist spoke about what's changed since the beginning. Because the panel's comfortable, I'll go to the fourth question, which is even a less sized font, which is strange to me.
I even question the premise of the along with two yeah. It says high performing teams often run on unsustainable heroics. As you scale, how do you differentiate between a genuinely high performing team and one just burning out? Burning out its best people to hit deadlines. Let's run the panel.
So for how you define high performing team as well. My view though, I've had really great teams and I've had teams that I've had to augment to be able to deliver. And speak to your point about costing and resource profiling, etc. Whenever I take over a project or start a project, I always do my resource profiling and then I'll be able to augment to what they're given me and then be able to build out what the team looks like. I've been very lucky that I'd had the opportunity to be able to create my own teams and pick people I've worked with previously and then be able to create that team, which is then becomes some of my nucleus to deliver. I will never burn out my team, ever. That's looking at my mates of it. And you talk about, measures to success, deliver on time, make sure customers happy, but will my team want to work with me again? And if the answer is yes, then I've done my job well. I can ring all around the country and ask them to have work with me again and then be here in a heartbeat. And that's why I suppose when I talk about what's a high-performing team, it's people that work well together and they're like the cogs in the wheel to be able to augment each other to deliver. If one wheel or one cog doesn't work with the rest of the wheels, they're removed. I don't care how brilliant they are because you can't have one performer that sacrifices everybody else. It just doesn't work. So that's how I create my teams. And there's also with cushion, right? So as the delivery leader, my job is to make sure they put everything they need to be able to deliver. And that could mean taking snacks out to them at 3 a.m. in the morning when we're at CDC doing a deployment. It could mean having those arguments with the executives at secretariat level say, I know what you've been told, it's not going to work, leave the team alone. So it just depends on what that team needs, is what they're like kind of augment to do. So that's my heads up, sorry.
Yeah, so that's good. You probably already response to that. So, what sort of a strategy do you have to reduce burnout in your team?
But period.
What sort of strategies do you have to reduce burnout in your team?
So I've started being between this 27 years. I can step to my guys are at, so I can take them off I can build in enough facts in my delivery schedule as well to be able to rotate them through. And I can also, I suppose, work out that you've got one person might be a key kind of delivery risk and augment it with somebody else. So I've been very lucky in how I set up the team that nobody is very challenging over the years.
So there's an underlying trust.
Yeah.
Obviously, in leadership roles, that's one of the key attributes of personality trait, but is being able to generate and deliver, or not generate it, foster the sense of trust among your team members in the sense that they trust management to look after their best interests.
And sometimes it doesn't always work out for you as the leader. I think people need to be conscious of that as well. Like when you're delivering with a high-performing team, you also put a target on the back. Like the fact is that other executives will say, well, why is she doing that? Or why is he doing that so well? I don't want that. So you find that sometimes you've got to manage the external noise because your team and your nucleus is doing so well.
I had a team that won a monthly award 12 months in a row. And that was interesting to deal with the dynamics of that from a management level, because there was a lot of senior management would always try and generate a sense of competition and like a sense of urgency that, deliver on your KPIs or whatever it is, right? So it was interesting to manage.
When we delivered in a short amount of time and transformation programs are failing, and the ending the executives, the board was saying, what do they do? These guys are. And that you get that.
Yeah. You've worked on a fair amount of, as per your bio that you provided, the fair amount of diverse projects, particularly in Southeast Asia. What's your thoughts about this question? Like, have you worked in a high-performing team situation? Have you seen the roads? Have you seen people burn out?
Okay, so I think at this part of projects, there's a lot of energy. Everybody's like, let's do this and all that. And then projects get delayed and there's issues and then, there's a lot of noise that you need to manage and stuff. I think that's very, very important because a lot of time as the project manager, I think your job is also to protect the team and let them know what you need to do and manage outside expectations, stakeholders, etc. In terms of delivering, right, like question that I would ask the team is, okay, so you've done this for the past 3 months and it took us 3 months to do this. If let's do it again, right? Like what could you do better that we can do it in instead of, 12 weeks, maybe in 10, right? It's not about doing more hours, but how can we improve our processes ourselves, right? So that's something that I like to challenge myself. I like to challenge it because at the end of the day, I think that's how you build improvements as you go, right? Because rarely a project is done, right? There's going to be additional scope and stuff like that. So those are learnings that I'd like to take on board.
Thank you for great. It's a lot of academic stuff and there's some really good emergent stuff. But what I've seen is, to me, there's the two top criteria for a high-performing team is one is a shared understanding about what the objective is, but the second one, and almost as important, is the ability to reflect back on how the team is operating and communicate that within the team. If you do that, then there's no such thing as heroics. Or heroics is looking after the person next to you. No, it's where everyone looks after one another. Everyone is comfortable with saying, oh, we're close to burnout, or this isn't happening, or it's not working, or we're not getting supported properly, or the things that aren't going right, but also the things that are going well, and to build on those things that are going well, and to address those things that are. So to me, they're probably the two top aspects of high performing teams. So that's why I sort of say heroics doesn't belong in it.
I think for me as a leader, you make ordinary people do extraordinary things. Like, so, you sometimes just get a team that not near board in the selection process, and they bring something critical to the table as well. So just harnessing that expertise and knowledge, getting the best out of them. You have that first few weeks of storming, norming, and forming and norming. When the team gets to know each other, then that starts, the beyond style of working. What do they bring to the table? That's when you start actually delivering results, which are your own as well. So that as a leader, the onus is on project leads to make sure that comes across a lot and take the heat off them, all the external noise and challenges you face, you deal with them head on as a project lead, and then these guys perform what they're then hired to do as well.
So Dash, information
So your high performing team can be burnout team.
And I was coming to that point. Good one, Ramesh. That's really good. As a leader, it is very important to identify between that high performing and burnout. And the cultural aspect comes into it a lot. So I can speak culturally for myself, and I've worked culturally with a lot of other South Asian people. And traditionally, for us, getting that work done is so important. Working until 4 a.m., working until 3 a.m., forget about what the time is. And saying no is such a big problem. That's where, as the leader of that project and that program, it is important for us to understand that, okay, I need to understand this culture, get into that, and without calling it out, draw a line. Have a chat with the team. Nobody's getting a hero award because you work until 4 a.m. It is not a celebrity contest. You're not walking the ramp because you work until 4 a.m. The important is, as a high performing, we need to function. And as Trish called out, doing that resource planning properly, doing that advanced planning properly, that is what is important to create that high performing team. And high performing doesn't mean someone who is excelling at everything. No, and high performing means a normal person performing the duties and tasks within that time frame. And that's what a high performing thing is. It's consistently we are doing it, and that isn't tough. That is it. But the culture plays a very, very big part. And considering that the project world within Australia is very diverse, it's not just consisting of people born here or there. There's a lot of outsourcing happening. There are a lot of people coming from offshore as well. So like multiculturalism is there, and like diversity is very important as a project leaders to understand that. Like people will say, oh no, I can deliver it. I can do it. Absolutely. But you need to know, I have done it myself. I have worked until 4 a.m. on one of my projects continuously for days and days, and I was burned out. And I said, I can't do this anymore. And that's how I learned how the culture plays a very big part.
I learned skill based on experience.
Yeah, pretty much.
Thanks, Dash.
I think you have to also create your awareness to not abuse. Then knowing that someone in that particular culture may have been doing this for how many years, right? You don't abuse it if you're such a great points. And that's where speaking up is very important as well. That culturally, a lot of people don't speak up, and we need to speak up. Culturally we are brought up as like, don't say no, but that's where we need to speak and put a voice forward that, sorry, cannot do this.
I'll keep it a cushion, ain't I?
Oh,
Yeah, just I was exactly what you said because I work in Vietnam for a pretty long time, and that's exactly what we have to do. We never have 9 to 5. It never ends. And then I did an amazing job, but I just want to quit like after that release. And that's why the manager was super happy because he didn't need to have more people to involve in the project, but it's just burning out. And then I need to learn from that. And it's amazing here. Like people say, you don't need to be the best person, but you can make the wrong person do the same done, and in the time frame. It's like very different mindset compared to our culture. So yeah.
Very, very good point. Yeah. I'm glad to get it. A lot of this is the panel sayings resonating. with our audience tonight. Now, with apologies to Sudesh, and she'll point out in a second, the next question is, how useful is AI in the initiation phase from your experience? Now, two chemists last year were in the great debate, which was, I'll paraphrase, but effectively about use of AI in project management, right? And, it was a students team, Ramesh, an expert team, Sudesh. And I wanted to give this question initially to the winning team, remember the winning team from that way? It would be good if
Done it. So that I can build and I can see, but I could really had to think.
I'll pass it to Sudesh then. By the way, that is coming back this year, but it's on YouTube, yes. But it will be coming back this year, as you see. So very exciting, but further announcements to come. Okay, sit down. On how useful is AI in the initiation phase from your experience?
See, I'm a data person. I work in change management. I'm not saying I work with that data migration stuff, but I believe in data and analysis, and that's what I work with in my change management space as well. I'll bring back on the stats where 70% of transformations in the world do not deliver the ROI that the executives initially signed up for. They don't fail, they're being delivered, the projects are being delivered, but they're not delivering what they signed up for and etc., right? So let's talk about AI and where AI is right now. If you're feeding that information into AI, what information am I going to get out of AI if I'm going to ask that? It's going to be based on that 70%.
This will be based on file projects.
Exactly. So if someone is starting into the project is relying on that without that experience of project management, well, the mistake that I have made and what I learned from that, you're actually setting yourself up at your end with.
That's a major problem I'm grappling with at the moment in the finance sector. The last 5 industry events that I've been to the last couple of years, there's always been now a dedicated section on AI. And at the end of it, the resounding result of that presentation was fear. Absolute fear of where the sector was going. And I guess I'm only basing this in the sense that I'm with my own business. I'm now having to grapple with, how would I, first of all, what aspects of AI will I use in my business? Then I've got to think about, well, what am I replacing to deliver at the coalface? And then I found out from a recent session, a more important aspect, what data sets is the AI relying on in order to deliver the output via a bot or whatever it's going to do? And so I'm only praising this because I'm now thinking about my own business in terms of providing project management / AI services to small business enterprises, because this is what's going on out there in the SME world at 0 to 10 employees or 0 to 20 employees. They're having to grapple with, how do I integrate AI in a way of generating a higher profit margin by way of reducing fixed costs or variable costs or whatever it is. I'm just a comment on just raising scale, but I mean
That's absolutely 100%. But I'm not saying that you don't use AI in your project management world or change management world. You still need to conduct those initial interviews and gather that data that we can correctly feed into AI and then make an informed decision based on that. So I will still speak with my stakeholders. I'll still sit down with them. I interview them. I go through the questions. The great thing is that I don't need to spend hours now analyzing that. I can feed that into AI and say, okay, analyze this, give me this. But I need to know from my experience, what do I want from it? What prompts I want to need it to. So that's where the experience comes into the picture. So someone who is brand new to project management can say, here is my business case, make a project plan. Well, I'm sorry, dude and Judith, like you are not going to deliver this. It's going to be a big hijack project.
And I suppose where the guardrail has to be in is, I think that you look at all the governance departments and even the private sector, and I know I'm a board of management for irrigation water. We can't use AI in the company because we don't have a strategy yet. So you need to be really clear as to what is your strategy and guardrails to use it. There are departments that are allowing you to use Copilot, etc. But what are you wanting it to do? What are the guardrails project you at the use of the AI? I mean, I use it at home because I've got a female leisure company, so I use it to generate images. And there are different applications that I use to do things, but I put the guardrails around it. You know, PMI provides a truckload of templates. Now I can go onto Claude and say, give me a template for this. And I get it back in 2 seconds as opposed to pay, what's it, $250 a year for PMI, right? I trained it for, it gives me a template. I can know, I suppose it's being really clear as to one of the guardrails that you're using now for, and then making sure that you've got the strategy wrapped around it as well. A lot of government departments don't allow you to use it yet. They allow you to use Copilot only, and then understanding where you pick those things. I would never use it to basically analyze information yet, because you stick that information, it goes into the cloud. I get templates and pictures, etc., but I'm not going to stick my information into it. I'm not comfortable. There's enough guardrails to protect my information there.
Yeah, there was an interesting article just the other day about the legal fraternity and lawyers going to court with pre-AI prepared briefs and finding out that they've actually infringed on copyright. The output was in some ways somewhat erroneous. I think it was supposed to be able to fix it.
Oh, yeah.
I think Deloitte that got in trouble with that.
Yeah, and
It didn't prove free.
Yeah.
And they got caught.
But Deloitte, unfortunately, they use, and I went to work at the Treasury, they just rehashed the tax, right? So they basically would have taken the pack, run the AI cost to basically change things, and then there you go, ta-da. But yeah.
Me like they would feast the charge for.
4 million. Yeah. It's that, I mean, you're talking about your experience and using AI, and it's always about the human. The human's a big part of this. So all Deloitte needed to do was back check and read it and stand by in it instead of throwing it through and putting a feeling. That's all, I mean, and so it enhances what we do, and that's what you're saying. You've got this experience where you can do project management, change management and everything, and AI as a tool enhances that, but very much needs a human to fact check, make sure. If you're a lawyer, fact check. Yeah, so I think and that's where, I think there's really big opportunities for people, but it's not meant to do it all, and not have to do it all, and it enhances what we do. In the debate, we did brought up a fact where there was a medical negligence by AI.
Oh, there's Dr. Wilson over in the US.
Yeah.
Over the Dr. Wilson, right?
We didn't bring up that.
It's a lot of, but I didn't map this Dr. Wilson, which is an AI, from 10 years or 15 years ago. Might even be 20, that they've been feeding this Dr. Wilson the data. And I'd hate to think what Dr. Wilson's actually suggesting in terms of diagnosis today. It might be a case, what I mean by by using that word is that I hope it's not a case that the intellectual fraternity in the medical establishment is now relying on doctors and nurses to provide good quality advice. It's a worry. Nah.
100%. And that could, I think, the human need of that human touch, that involvement is going to even, the price is going to go tenfold more, because the confidence level within the market into the AI is going to drop down with all these cases coming up. And that's how people who are good at that stakeholder engagement management and getting data collected from the people are going to be much more costly.
No, this thing really scares her.
Yeah.
Any final remarks from the panel overall about this one?
Oh, we use AI internally. We use Copilot, and we've got a license, so we don't have to worry about it. Stuff being exposed. It's great. I use almost every day. But it's only useful because we get to do a task that you can actually, we've got the knowledge and experience to be able to look over it and say, oh, that's rubbish, or that is, and to then craft something from that output. What really worries me is that the tendency to go towards that rather than go to one of my graduates and say, can you do this? And we're finding a day where AI to do something almost in vain, and it'll take a minute. So I can then, what's the future for my graduates? Then to be able to develop them to actually be able to get to a level where they can actually be expert And that's the scary
That's
part.
the big-
Scary. It's gutting that lower level of a professional.
And
I think we end up in the needed now scenario. So like you do jump in the co-pilots because you want an answer like that. Right? We're losing that process of, knowledge sharing and upskilling and all of that. Right. I certainly, I'm a person like that. Information now, then move on. But it comes in a trade-off, right? So we need to make sure that
they're not building in it.
It's almost like offshoring your oil reserve.
Yeah. Go there. But you don't have anyone to pass the baton to. I don't have change analysts. The change analysts have dropped by 50% in my industry because of AI. Because the work that my change analysts used to do is now AI is doing it, and I'm using AI, or I'm prompting it. So that's reduced. So now I don't have anyone to pass the baton to that. Okay, I'm now retiring and someone can replacing me to the industry. So that's going to be a very big problem as well.
Ezra Klein recently interviewed Jack Clark from Anthropic. So we all think of Anthropic. We might think of Dario Amodei, but one of Dario's directors is John Clark. And just touching on the point that you raised before, Ezra says to John, look, I can go to Copilot, I can go to any AI, I can go to Claude, and I can basically say, I'm interviewing this author. He wrote these books. Here in book titles.
Mm-hmm.
You have it. Noting New York Times is suing Microsoft and other companies for copyright infringement. Come back and give me a summary of it. And what interview questions would you ask him, right? And he says, but that doesn't sell. And the reason that doesn't sell is because people can instantly work out that there was no effort made by the journalist or whoever the interviewer was to actually go and do that next level, that dance. And I think that's something that we're very much at risk of losing. Even with initiation, going back to the values. If you don't vary yourself into what the work is about in initiation, what luck do you have to get it too fast?
Okay. So, and the human factors associated.
Exactly.
I think the point is made about guardrails. And maybe real guardrails from a corporate perspective in terms of how staff should interact with AI agents or whatever. Here are the guidelines. You can't go outside of those. Keep it narrow and see where you end up with output and whatever.
See, people don't pursue it. I know up when my start irrigations as a board director, now they are happy because as is it, irony, we said you're not using it till we got the strategy in place. Yeah. And that's another 3 months away. And they're like, why not? So
does that mean your high performance teams are some
well, my Jane Joss so yeah.
Yeah, you'll find it happens across the private sector as well. Again, one mentioned organization, but one I have experience with, if they're letting their staff go wild as a co-pilot, right? And then, someone suddenly says, okay, well, what can go in, what can go out? And they go, oh, we better get co-pilots to actually control what information it produces in a Word document and actually give it a security classification or a label. And suddenly the whole onus goes out the window of the individual user and all goes back to governance. What's your AI governance? What's your AI strategy? And everyone I've spoken to within said organizations just goes quiet, says, oh, well, they have access, they can do what they need to do. And it's like, well, hang on, there's no guardrails. Is that client information? KPMG to look, is that internal information? What is it?
And I think else is in figures where it works. I mean, even the academics here about that secondary college, AI is infiltrating in areas, but they basically said you can't bring your phones in, no other IT devices. You're in the classroom. This is what you're going to use, and the way to go.
Now AMU, they're now doing bands like tests with pencil and mate.
Yeah.
It's really major test.
But last time we did I think they did a strong take at Mr. Avalon government, and they went around this, and they could kick them. So they had the computer from the government, the US and all, and then they had their own hashtag. You could say that basically that's some of my piece they do. I'm using Claude or chat or whatever it was, that affects my still. And they've said, like, this is right. I mean,
No, it's not big down. Yep, big job on location. We started to see it maybe 18 months ago. It's like, hang on, this doesn't quite read right. This doesn't make sense, right? And then you talk to your other colleagues that are on the panel and and you can spot them out really easily.
Well, now they have AI for the tick.
Yeah.
We've got that image patch.
Yeah. Crazy.
So what we'll do is we'll go with one more question from the board, and then I will basically let the audience loose. And they can ask 2 to 3 questions. We'll gauge how we go for time as well. The next question, and I'll suggest this is actually going to be your question, but since you took the AI one, who am I kicked on yet?
Beyond peak formation, beyond that stuff.
Phil. Well, all right. So we'll go with Trish. The desire for alignment often devolves into suffocating governance. What is your practical framework for giving large teams autonomy without losing control of the strategic outcome?
So that's a weird dichotomy for me because I'm a very hands-on delivery lead. I've done all of the roles in technology. So I kind of bubble in and bubble out. So I think it's back to your point about bringing the teams in to produce great outcomes. It depends on what kind of skill set they've got. So, for example, I have a testing experience, release management experience. I've been a tech lead. So what I do is I kind of gauge as to where they need that kind of governance support. I like the bubble in and bubble out. And the analogy I always use is that I'm like a parent watching my child drowning, and I stick my hand in the water and bring them that all they need to be. So governance is normally done by myself. And I'll bring the teams there when I need them to help me kind of augment that governance. I mean, and the reality as well is we should be governance should be used as a support tool for the team and also managing it. And that's how I would use it.
Thoughts from panel?
So I'm really looking for practical, like proper examples, like if you guys begin a project examples where you actually provided autonomy as well as you were like, oh, this is what we need to do. Maybe staying it harsh now is not what we really stay, but like giving a deadline and have to make it. But there was an autonomy as well while you started, or somewhere there was, So how you read, like an example, giving the same autonomy or giving the individual autonomies as opposed to the salary project. Well, if there's example for a project where you were doing project, there's a team scenario. Yep. So I suppose in my space is that when we develop the project's schedule, we develop the resource profile, it's a collaborative effort, right? So for example, I've got the SME, the experts delivering with me, and then they sanitize whether or not it's going to work. And then I create the bubble, right? So the nucleus is created by myself and the team, and we are an autonomous unit, and I manage the ball to make sure that no other noise comes in.
What do you have a potential example?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in structure. Like, I think if I'm going to a project, either at the beginning or in the middle, I feel everybody benefits from structure, and I personally struggle to function without it. So I try to put it in case. So it can be, for example, even on what's wrong, what are the problems, right? But if it's the usual cases, scope cream, this and stuff, I think putting the structure in place to say, okay, so we have a weekly cadence, for example. In between, of course, if you have an issue, please contact me directly if you can't speak to your immediate team lead. And I think building that trust along the way is very important because to me, those are the things, right? So structure, perhaps an escalation metrics. If you have some issues, who do you go to? Step 1, step 2, putting some hard deadlines in place so that you raise an issue today, by tomorrow you have to get an answer. Those templates will help. And the most important is you have to follow through, right? There's no point putting all these nice templates and processes in place, and then when something happens, you just let it go. And that's a terrible example because then they lose trust and then nobody's going to cast you in. So other than that, I feel, people are brought onto the project to do what they do best. So I like to get involved, but if this is your expertise, you tell me what you need, right? So that's autonomy that I feel
the person should have. But if the trouble period and don't wait till the finance happen already.
So when we speak of autonomy, we are saying that we're telling our team that you do have a choice, right? You do have a choice. You can make a choice. But on the other hand, we're also saying that I'm in control.
Yeah, there's no choice. I think we need to be there's no choice. I mean, realistically, if you're the project manager accountable, the team can't determine their own deadline. It doesn't work. I mean, you wait till they're
So is it a code saying with suffocating governance? Isn't that just in terms of in a question for alignment? That really is it comes into the play when projects have to scale up, go with that grown in terms of scope. And that's where this suffocating governance come into play because, the project manager is trying to keep it all together. But for whatever reasons, stakeholders, whatever said, we need this, and this. Oh, come on, we also need this. And you're forever expanding the scope.
But that's what suffocated the others. That's supposed to be scope management. So I suppose there's a difference between suffocated governance. Like, to your point, if someone's asking me for the scope items, 100%, I give it to you, but it's going to cost you much, it's going to take you longer. Do you want to do it? Make the choice. Yeah.
So I'm gathering interesting question, interesting choice in words, getting a national pause on that one. I'm going to let the audience twist on panel. Go 2 or 3 questions. Again, I'll take a similar timed approach. So give each one about 4 or 5 minutes. Not we have a hard stop.
I think I'm going to go the I going walking out.
This is our youngest members. Oh, yeah. What's the question? Yeah, what was do you have a question for our header?
He wasn't listening and he was on his screen, so we better get to give us screen and listen to the panelists internet.
I have a question. The green one.
I don't know. No, why don't I take that as the audience question? You take the leaks vote in question. That's hard. Put that one in there. Even though dashboards are notorious for the watermelon effects. Green outside, red inside. What unconventional leading indicators do you use to spot a crisis, i.e. for a incident, as a measure? Roger, what does that look like? And what's sentiment mean to you? Means how people actually within the team think of their goal, in the goal.
Said I'll do 5 sort of thing.
Early hit 5, the bottom. Yeah, based on even get some really good coincidences that are like a 10 question, really quick and dirty, got coins, do you think are we achieving, are we having fun? Are we getting the support we need? Are we operating a philosophy? There's about 10 questions in their head there. And that's what sentiment analysis, like it gives them a good early indicator.
Interesting. Interesting. I wanna answer one of Hamesha's question because I know she's looking for some practical advice and how I do that. And I heard this maybe David, the sentiment is so important. And change management, I should work with sentiment, right? And I do work with it, but I like to box it up a little bit. I want to be very tangible with those questions and measurable. The one question I always ask team when we are in that crisis that, we need to deliver, I go milestone by milestone. And when we are approaching that first milestone, I try to target 12 weeks before that milestone. Every week, we have that sentiment, just a fun activity, and have tangible questions. Okay, what is your confidence level out of 10? If your confidence is very low, what are the risks you're seeing right now? Doesn't matter what kind of risks they are. They could be very low, fluffy risks, what people say, or they could be really tangible risks that people say, our budget is this and that. So whatever those risks are, do you have a mitigation in place for those, or do you want some support on the mitigation? Who is responsible, who's going to deliver it, how we going to get you for that? So those things can let you target that milestone easily, and you can report on that early on to your stakeholders and the executives that we're not going to meet this milestone. This is what the sentiment is right now.
I think also the dashboard, people have this aversion to putting something as red. I mean, to point of that watermelon, they're green. So you're in the black, right? So, and I mean, I made a lot of money in the private sector as a recovery specialist. So I work for the banks to go into the banks to deliver projects. they've been failing and they became black and then I occasionally then flip them and deliver this. So I think we need to start thinking that red is not a dirty word. Red basically, so kind of was we need to be able to say, there's nothing wrong with calling it as red. The other thing is to, unfortunately, sometimes their senior executives, capitaries, executives, etc., say, no, can't be red. It's got to be green. And I'm happy to call it yes, as directed by blah, 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 this project is being classified as green because that's the direction. Yeah. And you watch them up. That was for the VAT direct. But I believe that. And I think as project managers or project leader, I am never shy of saying with the executives and they say, well, can you make it green? No. So sometimes in our programs, we have 8 to 10 projects in that program and all these little ones running underneath, and we're reporting on each of those in our governance board. And we ask, can you make this green? No.
It's 3 basis for it.
We're not making it green, but this is the pathway to green. Yes, we can give you a pathway to green, but we can't make it green right now just because you want it. And you openly have to speak about it. So don't be scared of speaking up. Those dashboards mean nothing if you're not transparent about it. We're not just a bunch of green salad that everybody loves.
Come across that issue on a few with the building sites. Oh, I think was either with the sponsor to the project or the lead builder. Yeah, could I do the honest feasibility?
Something that I think we might lose sight of as well is sustainability. And I actually wanted to ask Vino, as one of our panelists who specializes in sustainability, crisis can come from a sustainability issue. In your past experience, is there anything that you've seen from a reporting experience where effectively it creates a blind spot specific to sustainability, where you've got all these reports and there's something from a sustainability perspective that's just not specifically captured?
Yeah. Okay. So my experience in sustainability, just a little bit, was in community engagement for sustainable palm oil, in Vision. And so I think the project was about trying to support smallholder farmers in getting their supply to the supply chain and doing it in a clean, sustainable, certified manner. Right. So the challenges in these kind of community type and environmental type projects, I think, is some things that you can't predict, right? Like peat fires, for example. These are things that weather factors and stuff like this that are going to happen. It's a little bit hard to stop, but what happens is you can put like monitoring in place to sort of keep an eye on it and how best to deal with it. And a lot of these things is also because it's community. I think it happens on one farm, it's going to spread on the other. It's because it's in the environment, right? So again, a community approach is needed. So maybe like a water irrigation that is community wide. It's like that's how you deal with this kind of stuff. So environmental stuff a little bit. I need to gain more experience in this, but I feel it's got to be community driven, larger scale kind of thing. As an individual, it's kind of hard to manage.
So we're at 8:53. We do have a relatively hard stop tonight. I am keen to get one question from panel. I like the curveball green. Well done. But it would be keen to close this out with, you've had a lot of things tonight, your audience. Is there anything noting, especially as well, this is a Women's History Month panel. Is there any question that you want to kind of round out tonight with? Have to take a bomb question.
I want to ask, how do we get more experienced project managers in touch with the upcoming graduates, just to handhold them and help them along their way and get in that experience and talk to them about what's happened, how they could navigate this, maybe help with CD together, how to respond to questions, have by time, because I just think it'd be bloody awful to be an inexperienced project manager going in on a job with absolutely no support. And it might be harder as you see now or whatever, but just inexperienced. So how do we set up mentors in this space to support people while they get started? Because, yeah, I just think it'd be really difficult.
The company for rent specifically for female entities.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Fathers and if they're females, then great, that might get more into
I mean, just to focus the attention more on.
Well, I think you said about, when you go into a project, when you've got project support officers, project officers, you're getting 50-50 parity, but as it moves up, you get less and less. So it then becomes 70-30, and, by running recruitment here as with PMs, we have placed female, which is great. But how do we get to continue that 50-50, And it should be mentoring for everyone, but, and then everyone gets the opportunity to move on. Basically, that's what I think.
I've picked on everyone else in the panel except for Ramesha. So, Ramesha, I'm going to ask your thoughts to start your.
I also from a student perspective, I would always ask, do the students really want a mentor? Are they really looking for a mentor? Or they're really looking for places where they can really gain experience? Because if yes, then we have a couple of people. I have personally reached out to a couple of people on LinkedIn asking for help, and I think Nathan is also one of them. Whenever I'm stuck anywhere, I see that all of these people are my mentors, and I think I'm very sure that if I would reach out to any of them, they would definitely give me a little bit of and a lot of advice. I'm not really sure about that. So the question around is that I'll be looking for it, from my generation perspective. And yes, we do need a lot of those programs, and there are some programs. Again, I feel like I sound very enthusiastic when I speak of these opportunities, because I saw those opportunities and I availed those opportunities, and I think that's why I get to sit with so much experience, even because I had that experience. So yeah, I think I have
I think to add on to that, I think to answer your second part of the question, how do we get the parity of 50-50 at level? It's not just about the mentors, it's about the sponsors as well. So it's not just the mentors that we need to get mentor. So there's a difference between a mentor and a sponsor. Someone who is ready to give you that opportunity is a sponsor, because there's a budget involved, there's money involved in that. Someone is a mentor, is showing you a pathway how you can do better, right? So there's a difference. So first is a sponsor like you need. Secondly, which I mentioned before, is women to actually ready to walk through those doors and take that seat anyway and apply for that job anyway. It doesn't matter if you tick all 10 boxes or not. So there are two things that you need. And of course, organization needs to open more doors for women. And I think as women, we may sometimes feel that, oh, I don't want to be offered a job just because I'm a woman. And I understand that. But apply for their job because you're a woman. I think that's what, the International Women's Day theme for Australia is balance the scales. And I said it in one of my other, because I'm the president of Australian Professions of Multicultural Community, and I'm president of Australian chapter. And I said it there that to balance the scales, we really need to imbalance them first. We can't just balance them out now. We need to imbalance them first to balance them eventually. And that women have to lead the pathway. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to do it for us. We need to do it for ourselves. Walk through that door, apply for the job anyways. Doesn't matter. The worst answer is always not.
Yeah, and I think, again, like you said, that it starts from born. When you're young, you're supposed to speak. Because when you're of my age, then you just think for so many times when you really have to speak up with yourself, or when you have to make a choice. you're told that you're a woman and maybe you were not able to do it. You're not able to be a leader because you go through so many changes. So those questions, those doubts that we have, I think it starts from a very young age. Absolutely sure. And that mentality needs to change.
Because mentally we are two different species, male and female, and then how we are brought up just make that difference even creates the difference even more. So we are always harsh on ourselves no matter what. Anything that we do, we are always like judging. Before anyone can judge us in the room, we judge ourselves first, standing in front of the mirror and said, am I looking good? Am I doing this? I swim like a... So stop questioning when you're applying flawless practitioners. Oh, I am the Uber, right? I think you also need to think about coaching. I mean, yeah, you've got mentoring and you've got sponsorship, but I think that's subject matter expertise to coach a younger that are coming through the ranks. The fact is that you turn up for an organization and you might have been in defense all your life and you rock up to the DHS, right? You need your legs cut out for safety. I've seen defense project managers rock up and they don't know how to navigate that world, and it's crazy, right? So it's finding people that can coach you navigate those environments, understanding what templates to use, understanding how do they release code, understanding do they have a PMO, all of those sort of things that, us that have been in there for a long time can just kind of get the head around quickly. I think that there's a missing here still, the coaching people on navigating as well. So I think that's where we have an opportunity with groups like this saying, and to really kind of uplift them in those certain areas.
And I think you can be quite just specific on that, so that when you turn up, you are the best candidate.
That's right. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
And that there's not a bias at that stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. We specifically, groom people and give them those as coaching on the tube.
I'm working young right at the moment who's we rocked up and he's going to be a project manager, and he's a senior project manager. So how many projects do you have done? Well, project manager, the PM and never delivered anything before. The call be button, like, okay, so the listening for you as a senior PM is going to be more than a junior PM or a BM, so we have to skill you up. But I think it's also, you do it really well, asking for help. But yeah, I bring in the guy, and it's because you didn't put yourself under a lot of pressure to talk to a professor, uni or to a senior change manager or someone and say, hey, have you got half an hour a month sticking your hand? So, so even at that level, I got failed. Yeah, I'll keep her help. Don't be shy, and don't be shy of asking questions. Even now, I ask, in any environment you go with, every program is a new program and every organization is a new. And yes, you know some basic. Ask away all the questions. Many questions. Doesn't matter what to do.
So I've got a panel. Before you get up and lead, what I'd like you to do, which is purely symbolic, is going from your right, my left, to your left or my right. What we're choosing for me, I'm not sure.
Why? I'll just have the question.
Going from being out of relation, 30-second wrap up before you pick up your chair and bring it back to where it was. 30 seconds, key takeaways, thoughts, what would you like to leave the audience, focus on YouTube and Spotify.
Okay, so I think the last question resonated a lot. I just want to share that looking back and reflecting my career, I was lucky to find two managers, male, who really gave me an opportunity, right? And what I really value from that was they were a sounding board. They were not super pushy. They didn't ask me if I wanted a mentor, but they were just there. And when I had if I had a bad day, I wanted to send an email. I remember somebody that person telling me, just sleep in, right? And see what you feel like tomorrow. And feel today is probably like one of the best advice I've had, and I'll continue to give it to people, right? So I think that's where helping a younger project manager who maybe doesn't have that experience yet, having a sounding board or somebody they can just go to, right, is a great help. And I think these kind of forums present those kind of opportunities, but also the person needs to be ready for it. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you, Bernard.
You are now.
I look at you in my head, then it comes from my head.
You are no longer required. Yeah. But
My
And I've also asked people just be mindful about the camera. Sorry, because it may be right there. Sorry. Okay, thank you. That did not work. I'm sorry.
I think when I was in it, it's probably the essence of what tonight's all about, and about, you know, having these sort of communities giving back the knowledge. And I think that you look at around the room, there's a lot of expertise and a lot of experience. And I think that, you know, to your players asking for help, I think we need to have that normalized. The fact is we need to be normalizing and asking for help, asking for experience. You know, we've all had projects basically haven't been smooth, that got bumps along the way, they've either been closed down for whatever reason. And being able to share those experiences, I think we just need to start normalizing that, so that basically, rather than us doing things on our own and you having to start from scratch, there's a lot of experience at the table. What's the attitude? What's using in with it?
Exactly. Thank you so much, Trick. There's a movie thing. I went.
30 seconds is not enough, but I'll try to stick to that. Going to tear away from the project management, I'm just gonna leave you all with this, the woman. Don't associate leadership with a title. You are a leader every day in your life and every moment. Ask the question, there is no right or wrong. You have a voice, use it. We are given vocal cords for a reason, use it. Sing in the bathroom if you want to, but make sure you go into that room and ask the question and speak up if you have to. That's it.
Valued is the ally on our level.
Yeah, I'd say 4 critical skills for project managers: working in a team, critical thinking, reflection on how things are going, and the ability to be able to connect with people. Yeah.
And not relate. Vanessa.
Okay. So 3 years ago, I came to Australia. I was told that I will never get a job. I will always wipe tables. And also because of where the country that I am from. And I thought, and I told myself that, you know what? You have a lot of experience. You're educated. You can speak well. And I'm pretty sure that just after, it's just a couple of, matter a couple of months and you'll definitely get it. I kept being resilient and I kept on applying. I got a call from the director, a women director, who was the director of Pathways to Politics, 2 interviews. And after that, I got this UC level 6 job, which was an absolutely amazing one. And that was this woman who actually supported me. And throughout my journey for past 3 years, these women have actually supported me and made me this brave, confident woman I am today. So what I want to say is that please keep on doing the work that you are doing, because there's a woman like me who is told that you can never be, but women like you, we have this confidence that we can be something, someone today.
Well,